The final leg of their journey brought William, Lyran, and Rachel to the heart of Kalas's domain, a massive dreadnought floating in the void like a shadowy predator. Its sleek black hull bristled with weapons, and its size alone was enough to inspire fear. As the Eos approached, William felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. "We only get one shot at this," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "If we fail, there's no coming back." William nodded, gripping the controls tightly. "Then we don't fail." Lyran stood beside him, her glowing patterns dim but steady. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch reassuring. "We made it this far," she said softly. "Together we can do this." With careful precision, William piloted the EOs into the dreadnought's docking bay. The trio moved quickly, arming themselves and reviewing their plan one last time. They would split up Rachel would disable the ship's main power core, while William and Lyran confronted Kalas directly. It was risky, but they had no other choice. As they entered the dreadnought, the air grew colder, heavy with the weight of danger. The corridors were eerily silent, illuminated by faint red lights that cast long shadows on the walls. Every step felt deliberate, every breath measured. William could feel the bond between him and Lyran pulsing stronger than ever, guiding them forward. They reached a fork in the path, where Rachel turned to them with a determined expression. "Be careful," she said. "And remember, I'll meet you at the rendezvous point." "Good luck," William replied, watching as she disappeared down one corridor. He and Lyran continued down another, their footsteps echoing softly against the metal floor. It wasn't long before they encountered resistance. Soldiers appeared from around corners, their weapons trained on the pair. William and Lyran fought side by side, their movements seamless and precise. The bond amplified their abilities, allowing them to anticipate each other's actions without hesitation. William moved faster than he thought possible, dodging attacks and delivering devastating blows. Lyran matched him step for step, her agility unmatched as she disarmed opponents and turned their weapons against them. Despite their skill, the sheer number of enemies began to wear them down. Just as exhaustion started to set in, the soldiers suddenly retreated, leaving the corridor empty. William exchanged a glance with Lyran. "That was too easy," he muttered. "They're leading us somewhere," Lyran replied, her tone cautious. "Kalas wants us to come to him." Pushing forward, they followed the trail deeper into the dreadnought until they reached a massive chamber bathed in dim blue light. At the center stood Kalas, his armor gleaming ominously. Behind him loomed a towering console, its screens displaying complex data streams. "So, you've come," Kalas said, his voice dripping with mockery. "I must admit, I'm impressed. But bravery alone won't save you." William stepped forward, his weapon raised. "You've caused enough destruction, Kalas. It ends here." Kalas laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You truly believe you can stop me? You're nothing but pawns in a game far beyond your understanding." Before either side could act, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lights flickered wildly as systems began to shut down. "What's happening?" Kalas demanded, turning to his console. "It's Rachel," Lyran said, a hint of triumph in her voice. "She's done her part." Kalas slammed his fist against the console, rage contorting his features. "No matter. I still have the upper hand." He activated a hidden mechanism, and the chamber transformed. Panels slid open, revealing rows of automated turrets that swiveled to target William and Lyran. Energy beams crisscrossed the room, forcing them to dive for cover. William cursed under his breath. "This isn't good." Lyran grabbed his arm, her eyes locking onto his. "Trust the bond," she urged. "It's our greatest strength." Taking a deep breath, William focused on the connection between them. His senses sharpened, and he could almost see the turrets firing patterns as if they were written in the air. He signaled to Lyran, and together they sprang into action. Dodging blasts and weaving through the chaos, they worked in perfect harmony, dismantling the turrets one by one. When the last turret fell, Kalas charged at them, his weapon drawn. The fight was brutal, each blow reverberating through the chamber. William tapped into reserves of strength he didn't know he had, matching Keyless strike for strike. Finally, with a surge of energy channeled through the bond, William delivered a powerful kick that sent Keyless sprawling to the ground. Defeated, Keyless glared up at them, his arrogance replaced by desperation. "You think you've won? My followers will rise again." "No," Lyran said firmly. "Your reign of fear is over." With Keyless subdued, the trio regrouped at the rendezvous point, where Rachel awaited them. Together, they escaped the dreadnought just as its systems collapsed, leaving it a lifeless hulk drifting in space back aboard the Eos. The weight of what they had accomplished began to sink in. William looked at Lyran, then at Rachel, gratitude swelling in his chest. "We did it," he said simply. "Against all odds, we stopped him." Lyran smiled, her glowing patterns brightening. "But this is just the beginning. Our bond has shown us what's possible, not just for humans and Valeth, but for all species." "Peace is within reach," Rachel nodded. "It won't be easy, but if anyone can make it happen, it's you two." As they charted a course for home, William felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he'd ever known. The bond had changed him, uniting him with Lyran in ways he couldn't have imagined. Together, they had defied logic and rewritten destiny, and they were ready to face whatever came next. After leaving the ancient temple, William, Lyran, and Rachel knew they couldn't afford to rest. Keyless was still out there, regrouping and planning his next move. The bond between William and Lyran had grown stronger, but so had their enemies. Determination to stop them. They needed a plan, something bold enough to turn the tide in their favor, Rachel suggested, returning to her outpost to gather more supplies and intel. "If we're going to take on Keyless, we'll need better weapons and a strategy," she said. "My lab has resources we can use." William agreed, though he wasn't thrilled about heading back to the place where they'd nearly been ambushed. Still, they didn't have many options. The Eos set a course for Rachel's outpost, its engines humming softly as they prepared for what lay ahead. The journey gave them time to think and to talk. Lyran opened up about her fears, not just for herself, but for her people. "I never wanted this war," she admitted. "My family always believed in peace, in finding common ground with others. But Keyless, he sees only power." William listened quietly, his respect for her growing with each word. "You didn't choose this fight," he said finally. "But you're handling it better than anyone could expect." Lyran smiled faintly, her glowing patterns brightening slightly. "And you didn't choose to be part of it either. Yet here you are, risking everything for someone you barely know." "It's not just about you," William replied. "It's about doing what's right for both our species." When they arrived at the outpost, it was eerily quiet. Too quiet. William drew his weapon as they stepped inside, scanning the darkened corridors for any signs of danger. Rachel led the way, her movements cautious but deliberate. "Something's wrong," she muttered under her breath. They found the source of the unease in the main lab. Daniel, Rachel's former assistant, stood, waiting for them, flanked by a small group of Keyless's soldiers. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly, but his voice was steady. "I'm sorry, Rachel," he said. "They gave me no choice." Rachel's expression hardened. "You sold us out." Daniel avoided her gaze. "They threatened my family. I had to do it." Before anyone could respond, Keyless himself entered the room, his armor gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. "How predictable," he sneered. "Humans are so easy to manipulate." William stepped forward, shielding Lyran behind him. "You won't win, Keyless. Even if you take us down, there will always be others who stand against you." Keyless laughed. A cold, humorless sound. Brave words from a human. "Tell me, how does it feel to be tied to someone else's fate? Does it make you stronger or weaker?" William didn't answer. Instead, he focused on the situation, calculating their chances. Outnumbered and cornered, they were in a bad position. But the bond between him and Lyran gave them an edge one. They hadn't fully tapped into yet as Kellis signaled his men to attack. William acted quickly. He grabbed a nearby tool and hurled it at one of the soldiers, knocking him off balance. At the same time, Liren moved with fluid grace, disarming another soldier and using his own weapon against him. Rachel joined the fray, tossing MP devices that disabled several enemy weapons. The battle was intense, every moment fraught with danger. William felt the bond surge within him, amplifying his strength and speed. He dodged blasts of energy, countering with precise strikes that took down opponents one by one. Liren fought beside him, their movements perfectly synchronized. It was as if they shared a single mind, anticipating each other's actions without needing to speak. Despite their efforts, Kellis remained calm, watching the chaos unfold with detached amusement. When the last of his soldiers fell, he raised a hand, signaling for silence. "Impressive," he said, "but futile." He activated a device on his wrist, and the walls of the lab began to close in, mechanical arms descending from the ceiling to trap them. William tried to break free, but the bonds held firm. Liren struggled beside him, her glowing patterns flickering wildly. "This isn't over," she spat, glaring at Kellis. "Oh, I agree," Kellis replied. "Your bond is fascinating. Perhaps I'll study it further after I've dealt with you permanently." Just as hope seemed lost, Rachel managed to trigger a failsafe in the lab systems. The mechanical arms froze, giving William and Liren a chance to break free. They wasted no time, launching a final assault on Kellis. William tackled him to the ground, the two grappling fiercely. For all his arrogance, Kellis was strong, but William's newfound abilities gave him the upper hand. With a burst of energy, William delivered a decisive blow, knocking Kellis unconscious. The remaining soldiers fled, unwilling to face the trio alone. As the dust settled, William stood panting, his body aching but alive. "We did it," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Liren nodded, her expression resolute. For now. Rachel approached them, her face grim. "This isn't the end. Kellis has followers who will carry on his mission. We've bought ourselves some time, but we need to act fast." William looked at Liren, then at Rachel. "Then let's finish this together." Over the next few hours, they worked tirelessly, gathering weapons, data, and anything else they might need for their final confrontation. The bond between William and Liren continued to strengthen, filling them with a sense of purpose neither had felt before. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for something greater. As they prepared to lead the outpost, William glanced at Liren. "Are you ready?" he asked. She met his gaze, her glowing eyes filled with determination. "I've never been more ready." Together, they boarded the Eos, setting a course for Kellis' stronghold. The journey would be perilous, but they faced it with courage. Bound by blood, trust, and destiny, they were ready to confront whatever challenges awaited them together. The victory at the mining station was short-lived. Though they had managed to drive off Kellis' forces, the trio knew it was only a matter of time before their enemies returned with greater numbers and more advanced weapons. The tracking signal Daniel had planted ensured that their location was no longer a secret. They needed to move quickly. But where could they go? Every option seemed fraught with risk. Rachel suggested heading to an ancient Valith temple hidden on a desolate moon. "It's a place of great significance to your people," she explained to Liren. "If there are any answers about the bond between you and William, we might find them there." Liren hesitated, her glowing patterns flickering faintly. "That temple is sacred," she said quietly. "Few of my kind have ever entered it. But if it holds the key to understanding what's happening to us, then we must try." With no better alternatives, they agreed to make the journey. William piloted the Eos cautiously, keeping a close eye on the radar for signs of pursuit. The tension aboard the ship was palpable. None of them spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. William couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger than themselves. The bond between him and Liren had already changed so much. What else lay ahead? When they reached the moon, The landscape was bleak and barren, its surface covered in jagged rocks and endless stretches of gray dust. The temple itself was barely visible from orbit, a cluster of towering spires carved into the side of a massive crater. As they landed, William felt a strange pull, as though the ground beneath his feet was alive and calling to him. They made their way inside, the air thick with an eerie stillness. The walls of the temple were etched with intricate carvings, symbols that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Lyran traced her fingers over them, her expression one of awe and reverence. "These tell stories," she murmured. "Legends passed down through generations. What do they say?" Rachel asked, her curiosity evident. "They speak of a bridge," Lyran replied. "A connection between two species destined to unite and bring peace to the galaxy." "It was thought to be a myth," William frowned. "You think that's us? That this bond is part of some prophecy?" "It's possible," Lyran admitted, "but I don't know for sure." As they ventured deeper into the temple, the carvings became more elaborate, depicting scenes of cooperation and harmony between humans and Valith. In one image, a human figure stood alongside a Valith, their hands joined in unity. William felt a chill run down his spine. Could they really be living embodiments of this ancient legend? Their exploration was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the temple. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the lights flickered ominously. "What was that?" William asked, gripping his weapon tightly. Before anyone could answer, a voice echoed through the chamber. "You cannot hide here." Kellis stepped out of the shadows, flanked by a group of heavily armed soldiers. His presence was imposing, his eyes cold and calculating. He wore armor adorned with the insignia of his faction, a stark reminder of the power he wielded. "Lyran," he said, his tone dripping with disdain, "did you truly think you could escape me?" Lyran stepped forward, her posture defiant despite the danger. "I will not let you destroy everything my family built." Kellis smirked. "Your family's time has passed. With you gone, the Valith will rise under new leadership, my leadership." William moved to stand beside Lyran, his jaw set with determination. "You'll have to go through us first." Kellis's gaze shifted to William, a flicker of interest crossing his face. "Ah, the human who shares your blood. How intriguing." He gestured to his men. "Take them alive. We may yet learn something useful from this bond." The ensuing battle was chaotic. Laser fire illuminated the ancient halls as William, Lyran, and Rachel fought to hold their ground. The bond between William and Lyran reached new heights. During the conflict, their movements perfectly synchronized as if guided by a single mind. William tapped into abilities he hadn't fully understood until now. His reflexes were lightning fast, his senses sharp enough to anticipate every attack. At one point, William found himself cornered by two soldiers. Just as they closed in, Lyran appeared out of nowhere, disarming one and knocking the other unconscious with a swift strike. Their teamwork was flawless, born not just of training, but of the deep connection they shared. Even Rachel played her part, using her knowledge of technology to disable several enemy weapons with makeshift EMP devices. Despite their efforts, the odds were overwhelming. Kellis's forces were too numerous, and fatigue began to take its toll. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Lyran spotted a control panel embedded in the wall. She rushed toward it, her fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface. "I can activate the temple's defenses." She shouted, "Do it!" William yelled back, firing blindly to cover her. Moments later, the ground beneath them rumbled violently. Hidden mechanisms within the temple sprang to life, releasing bursts of energy that incapacitated Kellis's soldiers. The attackers scrambled to retreat, leaving their leader behind. Kellis glared at Lyran, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. "This isn't over," he snarled before disappearing into the shadows. When the dust settled, the trio collapsed against the walls, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," Rachel said breathlessly. "For now, at least." Lyran nodded, her glowing patterns dimming slightly. But Kellis will regroup. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. William looked at her, his resolve unwavering. Then we'll keep fighting. Together. Over the next few hours, they explored the temple further, searching for clues about the bond and the prophecy it hinted at. What they found only deepened the mystery. Among the carvings, they discovered a depiction of two figures, a human and a Velith, standing side by side as beams of light connected them. Beneath the image were words written in an ancient script. Through sacrifice and unity, balance shall be restored. Rachel translated the text, her brow furrowing. It's talking about the bond, she said. About how it's meant to restore balance, not just between your species, but across the galaxy. Liren turned to William, her eyes filled with a mixture of wonder and gratitude. You saved me once. Now, together, we might save everyone. William didn't respond immediately. He stared at the carving, letting the weight of their mission sink in. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them as one. The bond between him and Liren had started as an act of kindness, but it had grown into something far greater, a beacon of hope in a fractured universe. As they prepared to leave the temple, William felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were fighters, bound by destiny to rewrite the future. And though the road ahead would be difficult, he knew they wouldn't walk it alone. After escaping the enemy ships, William, Liren, and Rachel found themselves adrift in a remote corner of space. The EOS's cloaking device had bought them some time, but they all knew it was only a temporary solution. Sooner or later, their pursuers would regroup and come after them again. For now, though, they were safe, or as safe as one could be in the vast emptiness of the cosmos. Rachel took charge of plotting their next move. We need to find somewhere secure, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. A place where we can hide and figure out our next step. William nodded. Any ideas? There's an old mining station nearby, Rachel replied. It's abandoned, but it should have enough power to keep us alive for a while. It's not much, but it's better than staying out here. Without wasting time, William adjusted the ship's course toward the coordinates Rachel provided. As they traveled, he couldn't help but notice how quiet Liren had become. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, her glowing patterns dimmed, lost in thought. He wanted to ask her what was on her mind, but something told him she needed space. Whatever burden she carried, it was heavy, and he didn't want to push her. When they arrived at the mining station, the sight was less than welcoming. The structure was battered and rusted, its metal walls scarred by years of neglect. Still, it offered shelter, and that was enough. William docked the EOS inside a crumbling hangar bay, and the trio stepped out cautiously, weapons drawn. The station was eerily silent, the only sound the faint creak of metal expanding in the cold vacuum. They split up to search the area, checking for any signs of danger. William and Rachel explored the lower levels, while Liren stayed near the ship, keeping watch. As they moved through the dark corridors, Rachel spoke in a low voice. You realize this bond between you and Liren is more than just biological, right? What do you mean? William asked, his eyes scanning the shadows ahead. I mean, it's changing you both in ways we don't fully understand, Rachel explained. Your heightened senses, your dreams, it's like you're starting to tap into her memories, maybe even her instincts. And if I'm right, the longer this bond lasts, the stronger it'll get. William frowned. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Rachel hesitated. That depends. If you can control it, it might give you an edge against her enemies. But if you can't, she trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. By the time they finished their sweep, they concluded the station was empty. They gathered back at the hangar bay where Liren waited patiently. It's safe, William reported, for now. Over the next few days, they worked together to make the station livable. Rachel rigged up a generator to restore power while William scavenged supplies from the eaves. Liren helped where she could, her strength returning with each passing hour. Despite the hardships, there was a sense of camaraderie among them. They were three strangers brought together by circumstance, united by a shared goal, survival. But the peace didn't last long. One evening, as they sat around a makeshift table, eating ration packs, Rachel broke the silence. "We need to talk about Kellis." The name sent a chill through the room. William glanced at Liren, whose expression hardened at the mention of her rival. "Who's Kellis?" he asked. "He's the leader of the faction hunting me," Liren explained. "He believes my death will legitimize his claim to power. He won't stop until he finds me." "And he's dangerous," Rachel added. "Not just because of his resources, but because of his ruthlessness. He's willing to do whatever it takes to win." William leaned back, processing the information. "So, what's the plan?" "We can't run forever." Liren met his gaze, her glowing eyes filled with resolve. "We fight." "Fight how?" William pressed. "We're outnumbered and outgunned." "We use what we have," Liren replied. "The bond between us gives us an advantage. Together, we're stronger than either of us alone." Rachel nodded slowly. "She's right. If we can harness the bond, we might stand a chance, but it won't be easy." For the next several days, they focused on training. William practiced using his heightened senses, learning to track movement in the dark and anticipate threats before they appeared. Liren taught him basic self-defense techniques, moving with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. In return, William shared his knowledge of human combat tactics, showing her how to handle firearms and improvise weapons. As they trained, the bond between them grew even stronger. William began experiencing flashes of Liren's memories during their sessions, images of her childhood on her home planet, moments of joy and sorrow that shaped who she was. At first, the vision startled him, but over time, he came to see them as glimpses into her soul. He understood her better now, not just as an alien princess, but as a person with hopes, fears, and dreams. Liren, too, felt the bond deepening. She could sense William's determination, his unwavering loyalty to those he cared about. It reminded her of her own family, of the values they had instilled in her. For the first time since the war began, she allowed herself to hope, not just for her people, but for a future where humans and Valith could coexist. Their preparations were interrupted when Rachel discovered a tracking signal embedded in the EOS's systems. Someone had betrayed them. "It's Daniel," Rachel said grimly, referring to one of her assistants who had been working on the outpost before they arrived. "He must have sold us out." "Then we don't have much time," William said, gripping his weapon tightly. "They'll be here soon." True to his words, the enemy fleet arrived within hours. 3 sleek ships descended upon the station, their engines roaring like thunder. William, Liren, and Rachel sprang into action, taking defensive positions. The battle was fierce, with laser fire lighting up the darkness as they fought to hold. Their ground dot William tapped into his newfound abilities, moving with speed and precision he hadn't known he possessed. He dodged attacks and countered with calculated strikes, his movements guided by instincts he barely understood. Liren fought beside him, her agility unmatched as she wove through the chaos. Together they formed a seamless team, their bond allowing them to anticipate each other's actions without words. Despite their efforts, the odds were against them. The enemy forces were numerous and relentless. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Rachel managed to disable one of the ships with a well-placed EMP blast. The distraction gave William and Liren the opening they needed to launch a counterattack. With coordinated precision, they took down the remaining soldiers, forcing the surviving ships to retreat. As the dust settled, the trio stood amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily, but alive. "We did it," William said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "For now," Liren replied, her tone cautious. "But this isn't over. Kellis won't give up so easily." William nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we'll be ready." In that moment, they knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but they also knew they weren't alone. Bound by blood, trust, and shared purpose, they were ready to face whatever came next together. The journey to Rachel Monroe's outpost was long and tense. William and Lyran spent most of their time in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The bond between them had grown stronger with every passing hour, though neither fully understood what it meant. William noticed that his heightened senses were becoming more pronounced. He could hear the faint hum of the ship's systems even when he tried to block it out, and his dreams were now so vivid they felt real. Every time he woke, he found himself struggling to separate reality from the strange visions of Lyran's world. Lyran, too, was experiencing changes. Her recovery was faster than she had ever imagined possible, and her connection to William grew deeper. She could feel his emotions as if they were her own frustration when the ship's sensors picked up anomalies, his quiet determination as he plotted their course, and even his occasional moments of doubt. It was unsettling, but also comforting. For the first time since the war began, she didn't feel entirely alone. As they approached the outpost, a small structure floating amidst an asteroid field, William slowed the EOS and activated the communication system. "This is William Carter requesting permission to dock," he said into the mic. There was a long pause before a voice crackled back. "Permission granted. Identify your passenger." William hesitated. He wasn't sure how much to reveal about. "Lyran, friend," he replied cautiously. "We need help." The response was curt. "Dock at Bay 3. Someone will meet you inside." When they landed, William helped Lyran out of the ship. The airlock opened into a dimly lit corridor, and they were greeted by a tall, wiry woman with sharp features and piercing gray eyes. She introduced herself as Rachel Monroe. "You're lucky I don't have visitors often," she said, her tone clipped but not unfriendly. "Come with me." Rachel led them to a cluttered lab filled with strange equipment and glowing displays. She gestured for Lyran to sit on a diagnostic table while she studied William with evident curiosity. "So, this is the human who donated blood to a Velith," she said, almost to herself. "Interesting." William shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "How do you know about the Velith?" "I've spent years studying interspecies biology," Rachel explained. "Your species isn't exactly known for its compatibility with others. What you did shouldn't have worked, but here we are." She turned her attention to Lyran, running a series of scans with handheld devices. As the data streamed onto a nearby screen, Rachel's expression grew thoughtful. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Her cellular regeneration has accelerated far beyond normal levels. And you," she glanced at William, "your neural activity is off the charts. Have you been experiencing anything unusual?" William hesitated, unsure how much to share. Finally, he nodded. "My senses are sharper. I can see and hear things I couldn't before. And I've been having these visions of places I've never been." Rachel nodded as if this confirmed something she already suspected. "It's the bond," she said. "The transfusion created a link between you. 2. Your bodies are sharing more than just blood. You're exchanging energy, information, maybe even memories." "A bond?" William repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "What does that mean?" "Is it dangerous?" Rachel shrugged. "Hard to say. This kind of connection is unprecedented. But based on what I'm seeing, it's symbiotic. You're both benefiting from it. She heals faster because of your blood, and you're gaining abilities that aren't typically human." Lyran spoke up then, her voice calm but firm. "What about the risks? Could this bond harm us?" Rachel paused, considering the question. "Possibly. If one of you gets injured or sick, the other might feel it too. You're sharing vulnerabilities now. But as long as you're both healthy, the bond should remain stable." William frowned. Sharing vulnerabilities sounded like a recipe for trouble, especially given their situation. Still, there wasn't much they could do about it now. They needed answers, and Rachel seemed to be their best chance at getting them. Over the next few hours, Rachel ran more tests, asking questions and jotting down notes. She explained that the Velith were rumored to possess a unique biological makeup that allowed them to adapt quickly to new environments. Their blood carried properties unlike anything found in humans, which made William's compatibility all the more remarkable. It's almost as if your blood was designed to work with hers, Rachel mused. But that doesn't make sense unless... Unless what? William pressed. Rachel hesitated. Unless someone planned this. Or at least anticipated it. The room fell silent. William and Liren exchanged a glance, both unsettled by the implication. Was it possible that the bond hadn't been an accident? That someone or something had intended for this to happen? Before they could dwell on the idea further, alarms blared through the outpost. Rachel rushed to a monitor, her face tightening. With concern, "We've got company," she said grimly. 3 ships, closing fast. William's stomach sank. Are they hostile? They wouldn't be here otherwise, Rachel replied. Get to the ship, now. They scrambled back. To the EOS, Rachel following close behind. I'm coming with you, she declared. If they're after her, they'll destroy this place once they realize she's gone. William didn't argue. He trusted Rachel's expertise, and they needed all the help they could get. As they powered up the engines, the enemy ships appeared on the radar, sleek and menacing. Laser fire erupted around them, forcing William to maneuver the EOS through the narrow gaps of the asteroid field. Liren gripped the edge of her seat, her glowing patterns flickering wildly. They won't stop until they catch us, she said. Tightly. Then we'll make sure they don't, William replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. Rachel worked furiously at a console, trying to boost the ship's shields. Hold on, she shouted as another blast rocked the vessel. Through sheer skill and determination, William guided the EOS out of the asteroid field and into open space. The enemy ships pursued, relentless and fast. Just when it seemed like escape was impossible, Rachel activated a hidden feature of the ship, a prototype cloaking device she had been testing. The EOS shimmered and vanished from sight, leaving their pursuers confused and directionless. For a moment, the trio sat in stunned silence, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away. That was too close, Rachel muttered, slumping back in her chair. William exhaled deeply, his hand still gripping the controls. We can't keep running forever. They'll find us again. Liren nodded, her expression resolute. Then we must prepare. We cannot let them win. As the EOS drifted silently through the void, William felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together. The bond between him and Liren had changed everything, tying their fates together in ways neither of them could have predicted. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. They were no longer just survivors. They were fighters. After escaping the wreckage, William and Liren made their way to the EOS, William's small but sturdy research vessel. It wasn't much, just a cramped cockpit, a tiny living quarters, and a medical bay, but it was enough to keep them safe. For now, William helped Liren settle into one of the seats, ensuring she was comfortable before heading to the controls. As he powered up the ship, his mind raced with questions. Who exactly was Liren? Why had her blood reacted so strangely to his? And what would happen next? For her part, Liren seemed content to rest, her glowing patterns dimming slightly as exhaustion took hold. But even in her weakened state, she exuded an air of quiet dignity. There was something regal about her, though William couldn't quite put his finger on why. He glanced at her occasionally as he piloted the ship away from the debris field, half expecting her to disappear like some kind of dream. Once they were safely out of range of any potential threats, William turned his attention back to Liren. How are you feeling? He asked, keeping his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. Better, she replied, her words translated smoothly by the device strapped to her wrist. Your blood, it is still working. William frowned. Her statement sounded strange, almost unsettling. What do you mean, still working? Liren hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. It is repairing me, faster than I thought possible. Your body, it is unlike anything I have ever known. That didn't sit well with William. He had done what he could to save her life. But the idea that his blood might be doing more than just healing her injuries worried him. What if there were side effects? What if whatever made his blood special came back to bite them both later? Still, he pushed those thoughts aside. For now, Liren was alive, and that was what mattered. Over the next few hours, they talked, or rather, Liren talked while William listened. She explained more about her people, the Valith, a species that had once thrived across multiple star systems. They were explorers, scientists, and diplomats, revered for their wisdom and technological advancements. But peace hadn't lasted forever. A faction within their society, led by ambitious warlords, had grown dissatisfied with the ruling family's cautious approach to expansion. Civil war erupted, tearing the Valith apart. And now they're after me, Liren finished, her voice tinged with sadness. If they capture me, they will use my position to legitimize their rule. My death would suit them just as well. William nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of her situation. So, you're saying Earth might be next on their list? Liren looked surprised. Earth? Why would they go there? They think we're sitting on resources they need, William explained. That's why I'm out here. We've been monitoring unusual activity near our borders. If your enemies are planning to invade, we need to know. Liren's expression darkened. Then we must stop them. But I cannot do it alone. The weight of her words hung in the air. William realized that by saving her, he had unwittingly stepped into a conflict far bigger than himself. He wasn't just dealing with a dying alien anymore. He was caught up in a galactic power struggle that could determine the fate of billions. The thought should have terrified him, but instead, it filled him with a strange sense of purpose. Maybe this was why he had been sent out here, to make a difference. As the hours passed, William began noticing subtle changes in himself. At first, it was nothing major, just a heightened awareness of his surroundings. He could hear the faint hum of the ship's engines more clearly than before, and his vision seemed sharper, able to pick out details in the darkness outside the windows. Then came the dreams. Vivid, surreal images flooded his mind whenever he closed his eyes. Strange landscapes bathed in golden light, towering structures etched with intricate symbols, and voices whispering in languages he didn't understand. When he mentioned these changes to Liren, she grew thoughtful. It may be the bond, she said. Our bodies are connected now, sharing something deeper than mere blood. A bond? William echoed, his brow furrowing. What kind of bond? I do not know, Liren admitted, but it is rare, perhaps even unique. The transfusion has linked us in ways neither of us anticipated. That night, as William lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was changing in ways he couldn't control. The dreams returned, more intense this time, pulling him into visions of Liren's world. He saw vast oceans shimmering under twin suns, forests glowing with bioluminescent plants, and cities built on floating platforms high above the ground. In each vision, he felt a pull, a yearning to step closer, to explore. Meanwhile, Liren wrestled with her own emotions. She had never imagined relying on a human for survival, let alone forming a connection with one. Yet there was no denying the bond between them. Whenever William experienced discomfort or stress, she felt it too, a faint echo resonating through her chest. It was disorienting, but also strangely comforting, as if she wasn't entirely alone anymore by the time morning arrived. Or what passed for morning in the timeless expanse of space, they had reached the decision. They couldn't stay hidden forever. If Liren's enemies were truly planning an invasion of Earth, they needed help. And there was only one person who might be able to provide answers. Rachel Monroe, a reclusive scientist known for her work in interspecies biology. Her outpost lay on the edge of charted space. A risky journey, but their best chance of understanding what was happening to them. As William plotted a course for the outpost, Liren watched him closely, her glowing patterns flickering softly. You are brave, she said after a long silence. To risk so much for someone you barely know. William shrugged, trying to play it cool. I'm just doing my job. No, Lyran countered gently. This is more than duty. You chose to save me when you had no reason to. That is courage. Her words lingered in his mind as the EOS sped toward its destination. Courage or not, William knew they were walking into uncharted territory. Whatever awaited them at Rachel Monroe's outpost, one thing was certain. Their lives, and perhaps the fate of two worlds, depended on what they discovered next. In the cold silence of deep space, far from the familiar blue glow of Earth, a lone human warrior drifted through the wreckage of what was once a thriving research station. The man's name was William Carter, a soldier known for his courage and resourcefulness. His ship, the EOS, had been sent to investigate strange energy readings in this uncharted sector of the galaxy. What he found instead was chaos, a shattered alien vessel, debris scattered like confetti across the void, and signs of a violent battle that had left no survivors. William floated cautiously among the ruins, his helmet's visor reflecting the dim light of a distant star. He scanned the area with practiced precision, his suit's sensors picking up faint traces of life. It wasn't much, just a weak pulse, but it was enough to make him curious. Guided by the signal, he maneuvered toward a jagged piece of wreckage, where something or someone was trapped beneath twisted metal. As he approached, he saw her. At first glance, she didn't look like any creature he'd ever encountered in training videos or classified files. Her body was slender, almost fragile, with skin that shimmered faintly even in the darkness. Patterns of glowing lines pulsed rhythmically along her arms and neck, as though they were alive. She wasn't human, but there was something undeniably intelligent about her gaze, even as pain clouded her eyes. The alien tried to speak, but her voice came out as a series of soft clicks and hums. William activated his translation device, a bulky gadget strapped to his belt, which struggled to interpret the sounds. After several tense moments, fragmented words appeared on the screen. Help! Please! William hesitated. Helping an unknown alien species went against every protocol drilled into him during his military service. But there was something about the way she looked at him, not with fear or hostility, but with quiet desperation that made him set aside his doubts. He knelt beside her and carefully examined her injuries. A sharp piece of shrapnel had pierced her side, and her breathing was shallow and uneven. If he didn't do something soon, she wouldn't last long. I need to stabilize you, he said aloud, more to himself than to her. He rummaged through his medical kit, pulling out bandages and antiseptic gel designed for human use. None of it seemed suitable for her physiology, but he had to try. As he worked, the translation device crackled to life again, translating her weak reply. Blood, your blood. William froze. The request caught him off guard. Sharing blood? That sounded dangerous, even reckless. Yet, the device confirmed her words, repeating them over and over until he couldn't ignore them anymore. Why my blood? He asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Compatible, came the response. Save me, William frowned, weighing the risks. He knew interspecies transfusions were rare and often fatal due to biological incompatibilities. Still, something about her tone suggested urgency, as if time was running out. Against his better judgment, he decided to take the risk. Using a portable transfusion kit from his supplies, he drew a small amount of his own blood and carefully injected it into her system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the glowing patterns on her skin began to brighten. Her breathing steadied, and the tension in her expression eased. Whatever effect his blood had on her, it seemed to be working. William watched in awe as color returned to her cheeks, or what passed for cheeks, and she managed a faint smile. My name is Lyran, she said, her voice clearer now thanks to the translator. Heiress of the Veileth. The title meant nothing to William. He had never heard of the Veileth before, nor did he care much about world titles in the middle of nowhere. All he cared about was keeping her alive. "I'm William," he replied simply. "Just call me Will." Liren nodded. Weakly, her eyes closing as exhaustion took hold. William stayed by her side, unsure of what to do next. The surrounding wreckage told him little about who or what had attacked her ship. Whoever they were, they hadn't left anyone else alive. For now, his priority was ensuring Liren survived. Hours passed as William kept watch over her, monitoring her condition and occasionally checking the perimeter for signs of danger. The silence outside was eerie, broken only by the occasional creak of metal shifting in the vacuum. Inside his helmet, his thoughts raced. Why had she been targeted? Who were the Valith? And most importantly, why had his blood saved her when nothing else could? When Liren finally stirred again, she seemed stronger, though still weak. She explained, haltingly, that her people were embroiled in a bitter civil war. Rival factions sought to overthrow her family's rule, viewing her as the key to consolidating power. Her ship had been ambushed while en route to negotiate peace talks, leaving her stranded and near death. "And now you're here," she concluded, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "You saved me." William shrugged, uncomfortable with the weight of her gratitude. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," Liren insisted. "You gave me life, your blood. It's special. I can feel it." Her words unsettled him. Special how? Was this some kind of trick? Or was she genuinely grateful? William pushed those questions aside for later. Right now, they needed to focus on survival. With her ship destroyed and enemies likely still hunting her, staying put wasn't an option. They would have to move in fast dot as they prepared to leave the wreckage behind. William couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning of something much bigger. Little did he know, the bond formed between them during that desperate act of kindness would change not only their lives but the fate of entire worlds.